Can I ask a question here
Yes.
about Faust? Since you bring up Faust and the bargain, I think I've always wondered about this show, and this is admittedly skipping ahead a bit in the outline, but I feel like we can jump here and then jump back. Did it always have to be this way? Was this the only way he could realize his dream? Was this the inevitable end result of putting the egg of the king around his neck? Or did he ended up where he ended up through some bad decisions and was offered this horrible alternate kind of path and way to realize his dream?
Well,
because then it really does become, I think, a Faustian bargain if wearing the egg of the king is like, you will rule, but at the cost of everything that you once held dear and your humanity.
Well, I firstly don't think that he held them dear enough. I mean, again, like, these were people that he would throw into battle, and if they died in service of his dream, fine. And that same logic applies here.
But he did not feel that way about Guts.
Well, that's one.
Or you could argue about Casca.
I think he definitely feels
he certainly did not feel that way about Guts. I think it's intentionally vague, right? Like, it's written so that you can just say, oh, he just values Guts as a very important tool. And I think that's where it starts out and where it begins, but I think Guts left such an impression on him that their relationship was more than that. I really think that.
Well, absolutely. I agree with that.
To go back to your question, let me offer a counter question for you then, breaking, proper flow here, but let's say that Griffith was never ever tortured like he was. Let's say that events proceed as you might otherwise expect. He weds Charlotte, for example, and then they, go to the river when the eclipse happens, and it happens anyway. And he's presented with the same choice, but he's fully bodied, fully able. Would he still make the same decision then, I wonder?
I don't think so. I mean, if he's achieved, are you saying that he has already become king, or no?
Well, that I was just speculating the Charlotte. Let's say no. Let's say he's not achieved his goal as of yet.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think so.
I think really depends on his level of desperation.
Yeah. I think he's just in such a state. I think he's in many ways like probably a little bit insane at that point.
Yeah.
So I think if he's whole and he's leading the band of the Hawk who are riding high and who've been knighted, I think they try to fight their way out of there.
Okay.
At least initially.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This is such a hard choice. I mean, like, because everything really does feel like it had to happen that way. But I just can't. Part of me just can't accept that.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Vergelia hasn't talked very much in the last little while. Like, do you even think about like whether or not it had to happen, or like the sort of the variables leading up to it, that like if they had gone the other way, maybe history would have played out differently? Because like that's a thing that, like, from watching this, like, it weighs so heavily on me, and they're so like these moments during the rewatch, like, they feel so weighty because you see characters' paths start to, like, they start to take these paths and diverge from each other, and the groundwork is laid for decisions they'll make later, and you're just like, no, it's because of this and there's just so many variables that lead up to the horrific end.
Well, I'm assuming when you say whether it was necessary for it to happen, I'm assuming you mean the Casca thing or the entire sort of deal?
The entire eclipse, that whole ordeal.
I don't feel like that's a meaningful question. In a way, you could ask that question about pretty much anything. That's just not a meaningful question at all. You're setting up these characters that...
Well, so I guess it speaks to the effect that event has on me, because I feel like this is the question we ask about personal tragedies.
Yes.
Like, did this have to happen? Like, how could this have been prevented?
Avoided? Yeah.
There's a moment before Guts goes to orchestrate the assassination of the queen and court ministers, and where he clearly wants to ask Casca to come leave the Band of the Hawk with him. And if that had happened, how would history have played out? There's the moment when Griffith is giving his speech to Charlotte while standing on the fountain about what friendship is to him and what an equal is to him, and how
what if Guts
to really
wasn't there?
and like, you know, this whole thing about like a true friend is someone who has their own dream and who's not subservient to mine. I don't see my comrades that way, my comrades in arms. And like if he wasn't there, would that have gotten his wheels turning, and would he have yearned to, I mean, he's a strong person, so perhaps he would have eventually gotten to that point anyway, but I think that really pushes him to want to find his own meaning.
If anything,
that is what like fucks over the everything.
Yeah, if anything, because it comes up at such a sort of a crucial moment, like right as Guts is really starting to dedicate himself to Griffith, right as that point is happening, right as he's starting to really admire Griffith, right then he gets to hear this speech about how Griffith wouldn't, about what he has been doing would not really count as something that Griffith would admire in any way.
I mean, this must have been a real blow to him. And
so
and
yeah,
that,
there were a few very sort of badly timed things that led to this, but I still don't feel like that's a meaningful question. That's not something I generally think about.
Just upon rewatching it, it's seeing how everything was so horrible in the beginning, and then the golden age. It was all coming up roses for Band of the Hawk, so to speak, and everything was so great and glorious, and they were on a path to happiness. And then to see it go back, it's so painful. It's one of the most painful experiences in fiction, like with fiction, that I've had. I think maybe part of what might drive people to continue to read Berserk over the years, when, you know, the quality might be up and down for people, and the length might be an issue, and the hiatuses are an issue, but maybe it's that, like, man, Griffith really wounds you as the reader, and you want your event, like, you want to be part of that. You want to see him fall. And so I'm just thinking, but I just love that character, the Griffith character, like, so I'm just so conflicted, right? Because I love him as a villain, but like I also love him as this noble, charismatic, almost hero. And I don't know, I hate, like, as a person who's invested in all those characters, again, it's the eclipse is an awful, dreadful thing, and I just like in every episode, you know, at the beginning it's like free will or destiny. So it's like it always had me thinking, like, man, is this all really ordained? Like, could it have been avoided? Like, what are the key variables and key moments? It's just something I found interesting to think about, and more than interesting, like, my brain is forced to go there again, because it's almost like this tragedy happens to me, is how strongly I felt about it.
I come back occasionally to Dr. Faustus, and in that story, the Christopher Marlowe adaptation of Faust, Dr. Faustus is already a brilliantly celebrated polymath. He's great at everything: mathematics, literature, languages, history, chemistry, you name it. There's not a thing in the world that he can't do. But he's not satisfied. And that's the thing with Griffith as well that I find very striking. He has an army at his beck and call. He is made for life. And pretty much, I would say, from the first third of the anime, like, as long as he continues to succeed, he could be content, but he is not. He wants power to rule. The murky area is in that he is mutilated and maimed. And that lends, you know, makes his decision, in my mind, easier to come to, because, you know, this will give me my body and my life back. But the dividing line then is what happens immediately after he is reborn. He could just devour or plain kill Guts and Casca at that point. But that is the point in which he absolutely crosses the line. you could make some sort of like very tenuous ethical statement saying like, well, the Band of the Hawk, we're always going to live and die under his rule if they had to do so to make him live again.
Oh, fuck all that.
No, I'm not agreeing that.
I know.
But there's not a single thing. I cannot imagine any way you could try and explain away, in an ethical sense, what happens afterwards, because it's the vilest thing.
I'm even thinking about like what changed in Griffith to make, like, why did he do what he did after Guts left? I mean, I know why I could spit out a fact back to you that the show spits out at me, but like, I find it endlessly fascinating to think about and try to figure out and kind of peel the onion. Like what happened there? Because that act, he had everything and he just lost sight of it.
Yeah.
And it hurts so bad.
It's just really easy when, like, Guts was very important to him. Getting to lose him, and not only just getting to lose him, but seeing how much stronger Guts is without him even realizing it. That battle itself was like, okay, I will have to, if I try too hard, I will kill him. I will have to try a bit less, and I will only wound him. And then Guts effortlessly destroys him without even having to worry about wounding Griffith or anything like that. Griffith, at that point, both loses something that has been his crutch to a degree, and he's shown that he is not that he is not as good as he thinks he is, or he's shown that maybe some of his fears or maybe some of his worries might be a bit more real than he might think, because it is implied that he's just burying deep down his worries or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there's a couple of moments where he's like, when they come to the fore, and Guts is like,
yes,
this is
and
not,
then immediately,
this is out of character for you to ask me.
Yeah.
If you think I'm a bad person.
Never mind.
But all of that comes to the forefront when Guts leaves, when this happens to Griffith. And at that point, to me, it just felt like Griffith wanted to make that go away. He wanted to really go for his goal, to just either distract himself or to just convince himself that this was just a one-off, or that he can still focus on what he wants.
Yeah,
he's a very sensitive person for someone as grand and
but
charismatic.
That's
and
entirely,
you know what I mean.
He's not used.
He takes
to
it all to
things
heart
like
so strongly.
Well, the thing is, he's never lost though.
Yeah.
There is never a time in the anime in which he is presented as having failed.
No,
with the exception,
that's what I mentioned that earlier when we talked about this.
With the exception of what happens with Sharp, but that's after Guts wins. Up until that point, he probably believes in his own destiny too strongly. And
it's like the fucking, Guts is doing this so that he can become the kind of person that Griffith will admire. So that he will become an equal and can be called a friend of a man that Guts still admires so much. Yeah. And that's the tragedy of all this is he really sees Griffith as this so much stronger of a person than in some ways than Griffith is and shows himself to be. You know, what did he say? This is just you stumbling over a pebble. You'll come back from this. And it's you see Griffith's face, it's no, he's not coming back from this.
You've been experiencing an excerpt from the Warui Deshou anime podcast. To get the full episode or any of our full episodes, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, visit our page on SoundCloud, or go to waruideshou.wordpress.com.